All right. Let's do this. So good morning, everyone, or evening, wherever you are, depending. Evening for me, morning for most of you, I believe, but maybe even the middle of the night if someone is listening in from Australia. But I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are. And welcome back for the 8th day of the GMP series. Like, it's pretty exciting that we're already at like 8 out of 10 days today. And we have covered so much in this series. And I'm really glad that you are here and going through this with me, because this in itself is a really important training for you to understand and level up as a part of what you do as an herbalist and the way that you run your business. And it's particularly important for today's session, which is focused on personnel, because your personnel really does include everyone who works for your business, and that may be any people that you have on your team, and yourself included. And we talk quite a little bit in this session about the trainings and how you kind of keep yourself updated with your skills and knowledge to produce the best products that you possibly can. And this training in itself is kind of a step on that way. Like, you are becoming more informed about current good manufacturing practices and how you can implement them for your business. And so it's great that you can be here and be a part of this as well. So as I said, today is the 8th day of the Good Manufacturing Practices series, the GMP series, and the topic is on personnel. Just to preface this is like a bit of a more advanced session as far as it's specifically in terms of growing a team and the expectations and standards that you set for your team, except it is still relevant for your business no matter what size it is. Like, even if you are a person of one type of business and you haven't grown a team yet, these principles still apply to you as the sole entrepreneur. But it is really important. All of the things that we are going to talk about today are so important to think about from the beginning. First of all, so you're setting those standards to really make sure you have that foundation solid for the way that everyone practices inside your manufacturing area. But also it will give you things to think about for the future as you start to build your team and the way that you practice it by yourself as well, to continue moving forward in the best way possible. So let's get started onto the slides as usual. And where have we got it? That's not what I wanted. And it's hiding behind my Zoom. I can't actually click it. I have to go to my slides just a moment. Here we are. All right. So as I mentioned, this is day 8 of the GMP series, which is all about personnel. So this is all of the people who have anything to do with the manufacturing process. This may be just you. It may be the people who come into the building to help you. Even if you have family members coming in for one day to help you with labeling or filling of bottles or like anything, it's important to realize that they should be aware of the best practices of manufacturing as well. And this is really the topic of today's session. As usual, this is taken directly from the FDA guidelines. As usual, again, it is for informational purposes only, but it's kind of my understanding of what's written in the FDA guidelines to make it more easy to understand. This personnel section is actually right at the beginning of the guidelines, because the people who are working in your area are obviously very important and have a direct impact on how the products are manufactured and the quality of them. However, I included this towards the end of the series because it is a more of an advanced topic as far as setting those standards and communicating it to the people that you work with. And so it's slotted in here, but it's right at the beginning in the FDA guidelines. So we are really talking about the personnel. So this is all the people that come in and have some sort of contact with the manufacturing process and the products that you make. And this does encompass the entire process as well, from when the supplies are coming in. So like if you're unpacking supplies and putting them away, the actual manufacturing process of making products, but also storing products and distributing as well. So that whole process, the people who are involved with that process, is what we're going to be talking about today. So the first thing that we need to really consider is about contamination. This has been a strong theme throughout the good manufacturing practices guidelines that we are going through, because contamination is obviously one of the main things that we're trying to prevent, because we need our products to be clean, quality, and safe for our customers to be able to benefit from them. And a lot of contamination can actually come from the people who are coming into your workspace. So you need to be thinking about how you can prevent that from happening, because prevention is a lot cheaper than the dealing with it later. So this is what we were talking about yesterday with returns and complaints. Those sort of things might have come about because you weren't preventing contamination from personnel. And so it starts from here as far as how you can prevent contamination so that you don't end up with problems further down the line. So the very first thing that you need to make sure that you are doing absolutely is to exclude any person who might be a source of microbial contamination from your manufacturing operations. And this is for, like, it's pretty common sense, but you need to be really clear about this, because if someone has something that could affect the products, they just need to be completely away from the manufacturing area so that there is like no risk that they are going to be contaminating the products. Examples of microbial contamination that might exist could be like if someone is sick and they have like a cough or something like that, if they have a cut on their hand that might be getting infected, if they've been in contact with someone else who has some sort of known contamination. And there's different ways that you might kind of assess and realize that someone could possibly introduce microbial contamination to your products so that you can take corrective action by excluding them. And so this might be they acknowledge it themselves. So perhaps they have a cough or a cut or something, and they say, oh, look, I'm not feeling well that day, and I've got this particular problem. I think I probably shouldn't be involved in the manufacturing today. Or they might be told that by a medical practitioner. So they go to the doctor and be told that they have some sort of infection, and then from that point, they shouldn't be manufacturing either. Or maybe it's actually the supervisor. So perhaps you're the supervisor and you see other people working and someone's sick or has some sort of strange looking cut on the hands or something like that. And you might actually intervene and say, I think today's not a good day for you to be manufacturing. Go home, rest up, and come back next week when you're feeling better. This is also important to think about if you're the only person. So if you're feeling sick or you have some sort of infection that could be affecting the products, then you can reschedule when you're meant to manufacture. That is more important than sticking by what schedule you have. Even if you have products that need to be made by then, you could either delegate it to someone else or wait until you are feeling better to actually do that manufacturing. Even if there is a wait list, even if people are waiting for products, it's more important to have safe and effective products. So definitely consider that first. So as I mentioned, some examples of the microbial contamination that might happen is like some sort of illness, a sickness, a cough, any sort of thing like that, or some sort of infection or open lesion, like a cut or something that could be on any part of their body. And it's also really important that everyone who works in your manufacturing area is aware of this expectation of only working when there's not as little risk of microbial contamination as possible. And so they need to be aware that if they're sick, if they have a cut, if there's like any possibility that they may be introducing a source of bacteria to the products, that they shouldn't work. So that is where, as a part of your training and bringing someone in, you should make sure they are aware of that, and it's just part of the expectation of the way that you work. And so this is for you, but also like family members who help you, friends who help you, or paid employees. Everyone needs to be aware of this. And we will cover that a little bit more in detail later on, as far as that training and how you may help people to learn these things that will help them be part of your team too. So the hygienic practices in general for your personnel are really important too. So we're going to go over a few of the main ones in this section. So the first thing is to wear outer garments in a manner that protects against contamination. We were actually talking about this earlier on in the series, as far as like what you wear when you enter the manufacturing area. So it's like quite good practice to actually like change your shoes, put on like a coat, or someone was explaining they wear scrubs when they manufacture. So like change your have some sort of protective garment, so that what you've been wearing outside is different from inside the lab, and you've kind of protected yourself and the products from the possible contamination that may have been on your clothing that you weren't aware of. Also need to, like, this is quite general, but you need to maintain adequate personal cleanliness. So just in general, try to avoid being dirty and introducing possible contamination to products there too. And then it's important to wash and sanitize your hands thoroughly before starting work, and any time when the hands may have been contaminated. So this is where it should just be general practice that when you enter the manufacturing area, firstly, you change your clothes, and then you clean your hands before starting anything, before touching any equipment, before touching any supplies, before, even if you're going in just to like shake a tincture bottle, like go and clean your hands before doing that as well. And also if you go in to the bathroom before, like during your work, make sure you clean your hands again before you come back. These are pretty self-explanatory and common sense type recommendations, but they are really important to reduce the risk of contamination of your products. We should also remove all jewelry or other objects that may fall during operation. So any rings, earrings, if you have like, any sort of things that may fall. It might even be things that are attached to your clothes. If there's anything that may possibly fall off of you and end up in the product, avoid that. Even, and this again is pretty obvious, but clothing that's like glittery or things like that, you don't want to be wearing that inside the manufacturing area, because it may come off and end up inside your product. And that is also why it's useful to have that protective outer layer as well, because it helps to provide that additional layer. Maintain impermeable gloves in an intact, clean and sanitary condition. So this is where you would have like a box of plastic gloves that you can wear for when you're manufacturing. And they're usually single-use gloves, so that you can use them each time and they are clean. Should also be wearing a hairnet or a cap, or even a beard cover if you have a beard, or like if you have hair that may fall into the product in some way, make sure you are wearing something to catch that hair so that it doesn't end up in your product. So that's important there. And then you should also be storing any personal belongings in another area that's not actually inside the manufacturing area. So ideally you would have like a little kind of room before entering the manufacturing area where you can kind of store your personal belongings and put on that outer garment as you go inside to the manufacturing area. And you should definitely avoid eating, drinking, smoking, or chewing gum, or any of those sort of activities that may lead to contamination from your mouth or those sort of things into the product. So avoid that in those areas. And if you do those things, wash your hands once again, because it's like touching your mouth, and then that's where you may be introducing some sort of contamination that you weren't even aware that you had. Like, so you may not actually be sick, but have some sort of bacterial contamination that would could affect the products. And then finally, just take any other precautions that are necessary. So if there are other things that you realize may have an impact, add these to your hygienic practices as well. And just make it really clear that you and everyone on your team, all of the personnel, are aware of these hygienic practices and are able to follow them. Now, we have the it's also, we need to consider the qualification requirements of your personnel. So here, the most important thing when it comes to your personnel in general is that they have the training and education that is adequate for what their role is, okay? So as your team does grow, it's quite likely that you are going to bring people in to help with specific areas of your business. And these people do not need to know everything of how every process works in your entire business and how to manufacture every product, or they don't need to know everything, but they do need to be an expert of what they do. So they need to have adequate training and experience to actually do what they are supposed to do. So let's talk a little bit about the qualification requirements. So as I said, all of the employees should be qualified and have the education, training, and experience to perform their role. So you should be thinking about this when you're hiring people, but also in the training that you give to people as well. So how are you kind of helping them on their journey to become better employees and do their job better? Are you able to train them in like the ways that you do things? Like, is there some sort of education or experience that you can give them that will increase that qualification for them? You also need to think about the quality control personnel. So you should identify who is your quality control personnel. And they should be qualified by education, training, or experience to do that quality control operations. Again, it's your responsibility to actually document whether they are qualified or how they are qualified. And this is where you can specify that they've gone through the FDA guidelines, or they've gone through this training, for example. You can write in and document that that's what's kind of been happening there. But just there's not a specific requirement of like, you need to do this to be qualified. You just need to show that that person is qualified. And then finally, the supervisor as well. So these are people who supervise the operations, and these people should be qualified, again, by education, training, or experience to perform that role. And it is really important to realize that you don't need to have a specific course or something like that to do that. That person just needs to be able to do that role, and it can be via experience as well. So you can train people on the job as you go. But, and again, I will get into this later on in today's session, but I really would recommend some sort of onboarding system as like a kind of an internal course for the people you work with, so that you bring them up to speed with your standards of manufacturing. So again, from what I just mentioned there, the key take-home message is that each person engaged in any operations, and so this includes everything from the manufacturing, packaging, labeling, holding, quality control, like everything, bringing in supplies and distributing all of these operations, they must have the education, training, or experience to perform the assigned functions. So what I would actually recommend here is for each role to have outlined what exactly their tasks and responsibilities are, what they are expected to be able to do. This will also help you in the hiring process because you'll be able to outline exactly what you need, and the right person would be able to say, yes, I am actually able to do that. So it's good in attracting the right people, but it is also good for clarity of understanding the role and what's expected of them. But then you will also be able to see what sort of education and training and experience those people need to perform that role to the best level possible as well. So my recommendation is to create a document for each role that you have, really outlining what they need and what sort of training they should have to perform that best. So when it does come to the personnel, you need to keep written records for the written procedure for fulfilling requirements of this subpart. So this would really be like a simple document of how you ensure that your personnel is capable of performing the tasks that they need to, and also how you continue to keep them trained and performing to the level that they need to be. And then you also need specific documentation for the trainings that you provide for your employees or people who help you as a part of your business. And this should be like the dates and the type and the people trained. And so for this second one, we actually have a template in the GMP pack, which is the personnel training record. This is incredibly simple, this training record, which I'll just go through quickly here. So this is where you would just keep this up and keep a tally of what sort of training you're doing with the people who you work with, and this can be for yourself as well. So you put in the date here, what sort of the training was, so like the topic of the training, and then you might give a little description about what was covered in that training. And then here you can write the personnel involved. So it might just be you, it might be several people on your team, or it might be the whole team as well. And then also just writing the supervisor of who was kind of watching that training as well. And so this is just definitely just a record to keep track of this. But what I would be recommending as well is really having those for each role that you have in your business, writing out the tasks and responsibilities of that person and what training they need to start and what sort of ongoing or updated training they should have. I think this is really, really important as well because unlike many other professions, in the US at least, the field of herbalism is not regulated in an official way, in that anyone can call themselves an herbalist, and you obviously need to abide to these guidelines when manufacturing products, but it's very grey area as far as what an herbalist is or these things. And so really keeping a record and showing what your training is and what you're doing is important to set yourself apart, but also to show that it's kind of like CPD points for herbalists. So continued professional development. We need to be responsible of that for ourselves because we need to keep updated. So just as an example, my background is in pharmacy, and to maintain the status of like a registered pharmacist, you need to work as a pharmacist for a certain amount of hours per year, and you also need to do a certain amount of continued professional development training points. So this is like extra courses, conferences you might attend, and that sort of thing. And like this isn't really official for herbalists, but I do think it's something that we should be doing anyway, because we need to keep our knowledge updated, and we need to continue learning, because it's not a field that we're ever going to learn everything in. We need to continue learning and keep ourselves and our skills updated as much as possible. And that is where the training comes in. And that's a really key piece for the personnel. So I wanted to end up this presentation here with a question first of all, as far as like, I would like to know, yeah, and we might open up the chat from now actually, because it is the first question I have, and I have another one afterwards. But yeah, so what training have you done for yourself or your team? So for those of you who are on the call, would you like to, I'm interested to know, first of all, like, who has done some sort of training as far as how to make better products? And it can be like online courses, it can be in-person courses. What sort of training have you done so far, apart from this GMP series? Like, this counts, by the way. This absolutely does count as some sort of training that you are doing. But yeah, what other sorts of training have people done to continue your skills or the skills of your team? That's my question. Margaret, did you want to share something?
Yes. I've just completed my 4 certificate courses on names of plants, how to identify plants, and how to do science and infusion and tea. I also got a certificate on postnatal pregnancy care with Udemy or Udemy or something like that. But it's the 4 courses that I took. I finished it 2 days back with the 4 certificate.
Great. Did you have a specific question about a certificate for this, or I wasn't sure.
So when you finish it, they give you a certificate that you completed the course.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, exactly. That's a nice feature to have. For this particular one, we don't have it set up yet, but we can actually have a certificate of completion for the GMP pack. We can add that in. That's a nice area. That's a nice idea to have for this as well, actually, which is not in there yet. So we should put that. I'm getting in the chat as well. So Chris said, I only have the training I received in my Western Herbalism degree program. We had 1 course on manufacturing. I also received a tiny bit of training when I made tinctures at the herb shop in my internship. So that's a really nice point as far as like that's experience as well. So you had the education from the degree program that you studied herbalism at, but then you did an extra course on your own. Oh no, that was part of the degree. And then you also got like hands-on experience by doing an internship in an herb shop. I would like really, really highly recommend anyone doing that if you have the opportunity to do so, because that's such a great way to learn how another business does it and really get practical experience. Like, I think in anything that you're doing, the best way to learn is really just to get involved and meet people who are doing it already, and then you get to, you know, get your hands dirty and actually try it out and do it. And that's a great way to learn. And that's why it's nice that that's actually written. It's a part of the FDA guidelines that experience counts as a qualification as well. So there's that training and experience is important to consider for that qualification. And so it's good to have both. Patricia, did you have something to add here?
Well, apart from the Herbal Academy courses, I just completed the food handling safety courses in Florida. Just to have that extra, you know, what is required of me as a food handler.
Absolutely. And that is really important. That's a great topic to bring up. We actually talked about this a little bit yesterday as well, as far as the, it's a commercial kitchen and having the license to learn the rules about how to run a commercial kitchen. And this is actually a requirement for some states to be able to manufacture products that are available to the public for edible purposes, to actually have that requirement. And we were also talking about, even if it's not a requirement for the type of products that you do or the area of where you are, it is probably good practice to do that, just to learn how to, the practices of how to run a kitchen and how to maintain that hygiene to reduce the risk of contamination, because that's really the key of how to how to do it in a safe way is the most important thing, I think, is definitely the most important. So that's did anyone else have anything to add in terms of what training that I've done? I'd also like to get a bit of understanding as far as, so if you're watching this, and this is wherever you're watching this, or you can also write in the comments below, I would like to know like who is on their own, like, or a solo entrepreneur, and who does have some form of team working with them. Okay, so you can write in the chat just to understand. I just want to get a gauge what people are doing. So we've got solo entrepreneur, solo at the moment. I think in general, the people that I work with tend to be more on their own when they're doing it. But we do have a few people who have an established team already. So it's it depends. But yeah, mostly solo. Okay, and yeah. And okay, so this is a nice topic as well. We've got people who are solo and with interns occasionally. So this is where, and I wanted to mention this as far as the trainings that are going in. When you have someone interning with you, for example, it's a really nice practice to have some sort of onboarding training when they first join you in the first day when they meet you or come onto your where you're working, to have some sort of training to bring them up to speed with the way that you manufacture. And so you could have like a PDF handout that you go through and kind of just work through them. And that might be like a 10-minute process to go through the really obvious things like washing your hands and things like that. And that would just be a guide to go through it with you. You could also, I've talked with some herbal businesses who have actually set up like a kind of the equivalent of an online course for their employees. And they go through that kind of like a really mini course with like, these are our expectations and this is what you need to do. And that's a nice way to also share your business values with the people that you work with too, so that they understand where you're coming from and they can also work with your values in mind, because in that way, your values are more visible and they're known by the whole team, and they are more likely to really be at the core of how your business is practicing too. Okay. And so, yeah, on this call right now, I've definitely got the majority of solo people and hoping to find a partner and grow. That's absolutely fine. All right. Patricia, you have something to say?
Oh, I found a partner that I'm currently training. That my son, who was willing to help me, but he has a background in pharmaceutical, and so I'm currently training him.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
And like I think it's really common as well for people to ask for help from family members when you've got a lot going on. Like, so I'm seeing in in the comments section of last time as well, the people asking their partner or a child, like one of them grown-up children, to help them in the manufacturing process when there's a lot of products all at once and they just don't have the time to finish it all, but they don't have proper employees in place yet. They often kind of bring in family members to help as well. And that's, I would say it's pretty common for people to do that, but it's a nice way to train people up, especially grown-up children who are interested in the field. It's a nice way to introduce them to the field of herbalism. But it is important to think about, though, that they're still aware of what your expectations are. But that's nice that you do that. I'm interested to know, I see. You said you have occasional interns. Do you currently have any sort of onboarding process to make sure that they're aware of what the expectations are as far as how the cleanliness and hygiene is in your manufacturing area?
I don't have anything like written for them. That's something that I am working on. I feel like it was my first time having interns. And so it was people who have some herbal experience and some kitchen experience. And it was like, they were just like really good fit and were super receptive to everything I verbally had to say. So yeah, it was just training them on my methods as far as like cleanliness and how to work the dish station and how to, you know, like when it was appropriate to like wear gloves or masks and whatever like that throughout the process, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does make sense. And I think it's definitely that is the way most people would probably do it when they first take in if you've started taking interns, I think that's pretty normal. And like a lot of these things are common sense anyway, but it's just, but I think it would be great to have something written though, then that you can do it. And I think the basic hygiene stuff, so even from that slide that I had, could that sort of thing there, we could even just make that into a PDF that you could literally use that as a base to use with your whoever's working with. You can actually add that into the GMP pack. That's a nice idea. We can do that. So that if people don't have anything, you could at least print that out in a nice checklist that you could share with people as well, because that would honestly take like 5 or 10 minutes when people come in, just this is this, have a read of this while you're getting changed, or whatever, when you're getting ready for the manufacturing process, which is nice. Now.
Hi, I just put something in the chat. Can I say something for a second?
You absolutely can, Chris.
Hi, there's a tincture manufacturer, a fairly large one in Sedona, Arizona, which is north of me, up in Red Rocks country, where all the vortexes are and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, a doctor, PhD type doctor runs the place, and they have botanists to identify plants. They use wildcrafted as well as other sources. They have a lot of laboratory type equipment, but their environment, and when they train personnel, you have to be happy and in an elevated, happy mood in order to work around any of the tincture process and work with any of the plants. And they really, really stick to that and feel like that affects their final product. And I have to agree, their quality is probably unmatched in the States. And if you're not familiar with them, they don't really have a website, but you can call that phone number and you can ask for a catalog, and their catalogs rock. They're awesome. They're pretty, and they just have lots and lots of cool stuff in them. So I would highly recommend it. They use a lot of fresh plants, which, you don't find that as much in a lot of tinctures. Anyway, it's really, really a cool place. But just that, they use, they say, the art, science, and spirit, and that's just kind of really what they're all about. Unfortunately, when I went through school, we would normally have gone on a field trip up there, but it was pandemic world, so we didn't get to go. But I'm going to go with them this next year when they go audit class again.
Thank you so much for mentioning that, Chris. I really agree with the importance of the energy that people bring to the process. That's I think that's true for basically anything. The energy is so important, and when I just think that's cool that they have that as part of their manifesto or the way that they manufacture, because I'm sure people can relate to this in the way that you've personally made herbal products, but even the example of in the kitchen, when you're cooking and you're feeling down and like whatever, the food just doesn't end up being as good. And then when you're in like a place of love and you're enjoying the process, it's just so much, the end result is so much better. And this isn't really measurable in the process exactly like how to measure that like energy kind of betterness of the product, but it does make a difference in that final the final product and how that feels for who is like eating the food or taking that herbal preparation. And so this is so important as far as how to do that, and just having that expectation that when you're manufacturing herbal products, you're going to be doing it from a place of with that positive energy going into the medicine from each step. And that's really nice as well. Laurel mentioned that applies to those of us who pick our herbs as well. And that reminds me of last year we actually had the Herbal Circle Holiday Showcase, and one of our Herbal Circle members, Yamaya, was mentioning how when she goes out and forages herbs, she has like a specific song that she sings as she's foraging the herbs, and she feels that brings a certain energy to like herself as she's picking the herbs, and it's just something that she does as a part of her practice when she is picking the herbs. But it's a nice thing that she does to put her energy into her practice of like collecting and foraging the herbs. But there can be, that energy is really important. And that's, a unique thing for us as herbalists as well, that sets us apart from other types of dietary supplement companies, in that energy that we bring, it's more delicate, but has a big impact, is, a really nice point. So thank you for bringing that up, George, Chris George. Did anyone else have something they wanted to add as far as that energy and that sort of thing, or a different topic as well? AC?
Sorry, I'm on my phone and I'm not used to using Zoom on here. Just as the energy point, it reminded me of this time that I made a batch of salve, and I was in like a really bad place when I made this batch of salve. Like, why am I a herbalist? Is this really worth it? Am I just going to be a product factory forever? Like, is this my calling? And the knob on my giant crock pot, it makes like 500 salves at a time, was turned all the way up and around. So I thought it was at 90 degrees, but it was like 190 degrees, and it burnt my batch of salve, and I had to like throw out, all of that work of the herbs and the oils and everything like that. And it was just like such a lesson. Like, you got to do the work to like ground down, and like Chris was saying, like be in a good place. And like, maybe even if you're not happy, like at least putting yourself aside to make the medicine. Otherwise it's just gonna, not come out great.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. Like, it's just, definitely. I'm sure we've all had experiences like that. You're not alone. Like, it's just so important. Patricia, you had something to add too? Hang on, Patricia, you need to unmute yourself.
I don't know too much about the energy stuff, but I mean, I know it applies to everything in life. As you said, Yolanda, when you cook and you cook with love, everything tastes better. If you don't like cooking, forget about it. If you go to work and you go with a positive attitude and you go with a beautiful smile, it just affects everybody in the whole atmosphere. True. And I think everything you do in life, if you have a positive attitude, like when I make my my blend, first thing I do, I pray over it and ask it to be, God, let it be a blessing to everybody that receives it, and I do it from, with joy, and I love doing it. So I think this is the way you have to go, in everything you do.
True.
When you raise your this is like life,
Absolutely. Laurel?
I also wanted to build on what everybody's saying about the positive attitude, because I've managed people in the past, And when you bring that sunny, happy attitude to work every day, your employees also catch it, catch the vibe. And most of us, a lot of people haven't managed people, or if they have, there's always this old-fashioned control and command kind of style. Whereas I think with herbalism and picking herbs and putting everything together, that sort of beautiful, powerful spiritual energy can come into play as well. And so everybody does it. I invited some friends to help me pick my lavender, because I'm allergic to it. And also I hurt my back and my knees, so people were picking my calendula for them. And we just had a grand time. I mean, we really just had fun. And I brought drinks and a little bit of something to eat after we picked the calendula. And everybody got to bring home lavender because, again, I'm allergic to it. And everybody's like, when can we do this again? So I think that really positive, happy attitude is really important with employees as well.
Yeah, and that sets the tone for everything you do. Like the fact that you set that joyful tone and that people enjoyed the process so much that they wanted to come back, like that obviously shows that you've set it up in such a way that it's a positive environment, and that's definitely what you want to be doing. I didn't actually mention that as in terms of like the environment that you want to be setting for your personnel, because that's really important as well. Like just the workplace environment that you have. It's not really under GMP, so that's probably why I didn't mention it. But the environment that you're setting in that workplace, how you interact with your employees and how they actually feel when they're working with you as well is really important. So that's great that you mentioned that, Laurel. Marcine, I see that you're on today. Do you have any thoughts on what we're talking about? No, that's fine. No problem. But it's nice to see faces and get to know, who's in the group. I enjoy this part of things, and like that's why I enjoy running the Herbal Circle so much, because of it's the same people that I get to kind of see who is part of the group and like the progress that happens. I think it's really nice. Okay, so in that case, does anyone have any general questions that they would like to talk about for that we've covered earlier in the season, in this series as well? Or let me know if you do. You can either unmute yourself and talk, or let me know in the chat. Margaret?
Yeah, I'm putting a question there that will you be able, or can you do some practical teaching with those of us who are just starting, so that we from the theory we'll move to the practical and then get on and build up on it?
Can you give an example of what sort of practical teaching you would like?
Like if we say we're going to do infusion or do this salves or tea, how do you put it? What you see, you remember, and then you can write it down. But when it is being done, theory, you get the certificate. But the practical aspect of it is also important for those of us who are just coming into it.
Right. So you kind of want to work through an example together, like have like the making the product and how the GMPs go into that. That's what you would like.
Yeah.
Okay. That's quite a nice idea. I've actually seen that this year I've been studying with Maria Noel Gross this year as part of her advanced herbalism course, kind of, because she runs it in the evening ES time, which is like midnight to 3 a.m. my time. So some nights I've been staying up and doing the live classes, but some nights I haven't been able to because it's just been too late. But I know as part of her advanced course, I did watch the GMP section on hers, and she kind of made a product and went through the the process, and that was like quite a practical thing. So we might be able to like do something similar there as far as like go through the process, like, you know, put on your gloves and to see it. We could do that. I haven't done that before, but that's a nice idea. We probably could do something like that. It's not part of this particular series. I haven't included that as part of the series, but I'll have a think, because we could do another extra session, a bonus session, as far as like putting it into practice and something like that. It could be really nice. So yeah, that's a nice idea. It's not like I haven't planned that at this point, but it's a cool idea. Patricia?
I have a question about the gloves, right? They mentioned gloves so many times. But some of the gloves that you get in boxes, even recently, they said they were contaminated. Do you recommend sterile gloves? But I know this is expensive. What's your recommendation with the glove? Or just plain good 2-minute hand washing would be better?
That's a good question. In the FDA guidelines, it does mention gloves. That's why I mentioned gloves. Like they do mention gloves in the guidelines. But I do also think that in practice, if you're going in as part of your manufacturing procedure to like shake a jar every 2 days, it's unlikely that you're actually going to use a new pair of gloves each time. So that there is a little bit of like practicality here. I think it's up to you to make your decision on what you want to do there, but it is written in the FDA guidelines specifically to put gloves on, like to wash your hands and then put gloves on.
But sterile gloves.
Yeah, the expensive ones. I think the clean gloves. Yes, but that's so I think that's kind of the guidelines of what should be happening there. What do other people do as far as that goes? Like in practice, I know that this is a learning process, and everyone like do people use gloves? The people who are manufacturing and at this point in time. I'm not sure if I've got other.
I think if you have to use gloves, you have to use sterile gloves, because I don't think just using those gloves in the boxes as clean as hand washing.
That's exactly the risk. Like, yeah, there is that risk of introducing contaminants from the gloves. It could be worse. That's a good point. Yeah, I guess that they should be sterilized gloves. I don't actually have specific advice as far as this goes, but what you're saying makes sense. Like, honestly, washing your hands properly should be enough, but like if you're using gloves, yes, the gloves should be sanitized as well, because they need to be clean and you need to reduce the risk of contamination. Like that's what it really comes down to, is how you're reducing the risk of contamination. And if you can show that what you're doing is in the best interest of reducing that risk of contamination, that's the best thing that you can do. But yeah. Does anyone else have thoughts as far as gloves and hand washing goes? Chris?
I was just thinking, in food handling world, they use those, kind of giant, clear, not really fitting, thin gloves. But they, those aren't sterile gloves. It's all about, properly hand washing, 20 minutes, all that sort of thing. And then not cross-contaminating. So if you put on the pair of gloves and you're working on the cold side, in a restaurant, you work on the cold side or whatever, no meat, or whenever you're exposed to meat or whatever, then you switch to something else, then you change your gloves, just keep changing and changing. But they're not sterile, they're not sterile gloves. So the type of regular, like vinyl gloves, like they have at the hospitals, those aren't sterile gloves. They're just, they're similar. They're heavier, heavier. But yeah, I don't think it has to be sterile. Just those box gloves, I think, are fine. But if you, can contaminate them somehow, or get them, something happens with them, you need to switch to another pair. That should be in the training.
Recently, it was on the news that those boxes of glove that were being sold were heavily contaminated and they were not clean.
Mhm.
So I don't know if anybody read the news. That's why I brought it up.
I watched the news too. I saw it on the CNN.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I think I believe that definitely was an issue. Like I think it could have come up, but I think it shouldn't happen. Like the gloves that it's probably like, you know, when there's product recalls or whatever, there was probably something that went wrong in their manufacturing processes, and those gloves shouldn't be introducing any sort of infection to the products. But yeah, like it's tricky there, because if you're using glove, yeah, you are adding an extra area that potentially could do things. But I think it's just, yeah, the idea is that you're able to change your gloves between each task, and you're really not affecting one task with another, like what Chris said. We've got in the chat as well, Helene said gloves, using them in bottling, use hands for transferring oils with squeeze tops. So that her hands never touch the oils, but she's constantly washing her hands at every transfer. So yeah, I think the most important thing, if you are considering how to put this into your process, and like there's the sort of thing that you would put in your master manufacturing records as well, you could like change your gloves, that sort of thing. But just thinking about exactly what the task is and what it makes sense for you to be doing, and yeah, how you can best reduce that risk of contamination. AC?
I just had one other thought, is nail polish. Like that's one thing that I went over with my interns. Like, yeah, you're like, no nail polish, because that can be a real problem. Like a friend told me they were making a personal tincture, and they like pushed down the herbs into their tincture with their hands, and the nail polish just came off their fingernails into the tincture because of the alcohol. But it can happen with any product you're making. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's so true with alcohol. I mean, they use the alcohol to remove nail polish. So it's just like going directly into the product. Like it's just terrible. But like that was true even in so in my pharmacy pracs in university, we were I'm not sure if my memory recall is right on this, but we either failed or were asked to leave the lab if we had nail polish and things like that as well, even though it was, yeah, just you weren't able to do that. And so that's the sort of standard that you would have as well. Like if you have nail polish and you're touching tinctures, it's definitely not good practice, because yeah, there could be residue of the actual nail polish ending up in the product, which is just definitely an extraneous material that you do not want in there. That's definitely a good point. And so yeah, getting some agreeing comments in the chat as well. Never use nail polish. But yeah, well, here's a practical person, Helen. Her hands are too busy to put on nail polish. But this is where you need to be careful of the people who you're coming in. You might be a busy person, but yeah, your interns or people that you ask to help may actually, they may have enough time to put on nail polish. It depends there. All right. And also getting, yeah, thanks for your nice comments, everyone, as well. So Lynn saying, I want to thank you so much for this GMP class. I thought I was doing so much right, but have learned so much more that I was not doing it all, which is, that's great. And I hope that it's been in a way that's productive and to learn and not to make you feel like you're not doing enough. Like there is so much to do, but as long as you are kind of putting in the effort to continue getting better, that is the most important thing. And it's something that we can all continuously get better at. Like even if people have been doing this for like decades, there are still going to be things that an inspector might come along and say, oh, hang on a minute, you actually need to make sure that you have safety light globes installed, or just something new that you haven't thought about. There's always something new, and just kind of being open to learning and being here and continuing to improve is so important. And I'm glad that I'm glad that you guys are all taking the time to do this because it is important for us as herbalists to do the best that we can. And yeah, really to put ourselves on that even playing field with the bigger players. We need to be doing the best we can. And like we mentioned at the beginning of this series, this is in the best interest of like our clients and our customers who take our products. So doing the best that we possibly can is really the least that we can do. we need to be doing this as a part of like that core business practice. So yeah, thank you all for coming, and I'm glad that you can be part of it. And once again, we'll be back tomorrow for the 9th day. And so tomorrow is about like the actual records and record keeping. So this is around like what types of records you need to be keeping, like electronic, handwritten, like what, yeah, specifically about the records. And yeah, then on Friday, we'll be doing a kind of a wrap-up section about your next steps and where to go from here. So thank you all for coming on once again, and we will be back tomorrow.